Gum gum. Yes, your eyes... Yes, your eyes do not deceive you. I have started One Piece. Well, I mean, if you saw my April Fool's video, you'll know that I did start One Piece. But to clarify, I have continued to watch One Piece, because I have tasked myself with a seemingly impossible goal, but I will make the impossible possible. I want to be caught up with One Piece by the end of this year. Now you may be thinking, oh, there's no way, like we have 5 months left. Well, I gave myself this goal over a month ago because I have done the math. There are currently a little over 1,100 episodes of One Piece that are currently out. And well, when I started this, there was around 200 days left in the year, which is simple math. If I can watch just 10 episodes of One Piece a day, by the end of this year, I will be caught up. And of course, factoring in certain days where I can obviously watch more, but most days I can just squeeze in about 10. And I have been making good headway, though we're not going to cover everything that I've watched so far. I told myself, of course, One Piece is a very large series. Even once I'm caught up, it would be hard to kind of dedicate just one video to talking about all of it. Because plus, by the time I get to certain points way later, I'm probably going to forget a lot of the early stuff. So I'm going to just start doing videos that are my checkpoints for One Piece. I decided every 200 episodes or so, I will make a video on everything I've watched so far. This video will be covering everything I've watched from episode 1 to 200, which is everything from East Blue to about Sky Island, a journey that has been a long time in the making for me. And well, let's just talk about some One Piece. Now, I was kind of dumb. I could have been way further along by now if I had actually started after I made my first video, but I have been dumb. I made my April Fool's video, my reaction to episode 1 of One Piece, and then didn't touch it again for about 2 more months. Which, granted, I feel like I was justified in, because pretty much all I've been watching in my spare time has been One Piece. I haven't really been watching anything else, outside of obviously reactions and stuff, but just in my own time in terms of anime I watch in my own time, it's pretty much just been One Piece, just because I'm trying to get as far as I can go. Which I know you could argue that, oh, then I'm not really savoring it. With a show that's over 1,000 episodes, there comes a point where it's like, I just want to watch it, I want to see. Now, I'll be completely open and honest in how I've been watching One Piece. I mean, obviously, and I think the most justified thing is that I'm skipping the filler. There's a guide online I've been following, but the part that people might get furious at me over is I'm also watching it at 1.5 times speed, which I still feel like I'm justified in, just because a lot of the earlier episodes of One Piece, it's that 90s pacing where, it's pretty slow. Well, you can say that I'm still not savoring it. Well, in my opinion, I am, just because the 1.5 times speed, I still feel like there's times where it's at that speed and I'm like, can we do 2 times speed? I don't feel like I'm missing anything. Either way, I just figured I'd get that out of the way. Now let's actually talk about One Piece itself. Now, of course, One Piece, a title, characters, and everything that I've heard about long before ever deciding to finally watch it. So it was so fun jumping into the first couple episodes of East Blue, knowing things but not knowing things when it came to certain characters, Of course, name-wise, I knew characters of obviously Luffy, Zoro, Nami, Sanji, Usopp. But again, it's one of those things where you hear the story and then you actually see it. I think we'll just kind of talk arc by arc. The first, 60 episodes are East Blue, which is pretty much just Luffy gathering everybody together, getting on the crew, and then heading to the Grand Line. Should I even give a broad explanation for what One Piece is? Nah, if you're watching, Luffy, King of Pirates, starts from nothing, then gets to the point where, super powered and all that. He had a devil fruit, he's got gum powers, he's a rubber man, and yeah, he's Pirate Goku. Now that's gonna get me some shit. Again, East Blue, it's the first arc, but it's a lot of still different arcs just because it's mainly, the first couple episodes are dealing mainly with, Zoro, which going into this, I knew I would like Zoro just because he's thrown in with kind of the characters like Vegeta, secondary main character, but is cooler. I like watching Zoro fight, if nothing else. He's a very unique style. The triple swords, the one in the mouth, obviously. And then after Zoro, we get Nami, who at first is sort of a reoccurring mischievous character, which is kind of just so happens to be around every time Luffy and Zoro are doing something. She's just stealing stuff, and then eventually comes to the point where she gets face to face with Luffy, and then she's like, hey, we need a navigator, join us. And she joins them temporarily. And then we jump into Usopp's arcs, which Usopp's was the first sort of long arc. First arc that wasn't really 3 episodes, which that was the first taste for me of what the structure of a One Piece arc looks like. We arrive to this place with our crew. There seems to be some sort of antics or evil things going on, but we don't really know. Luffy stumbles into the plot. We meet this one character who he bonds really well with, who ends up joining us at the end of the arc. Luffy gets incapacitated or something happens to him where he's away for a while, which gives everyone else time to fight the main villain of the arc. And then Luffy eventually shows up and has a climactic fight with the final boss, which that may sound like I'm complaining about the structure of it, even though that pretty much is the reoccurring theme going into most arcs going forward. I still think it handles it in cool ways, though Usopp overall I feel like might be my least favorite of the crew, at least in like the early stages of it. I did like his story. He's a boy who cried wolf kind of story where, you know, he goes around his village being like, the pirates are coming, and then the day finally comes where pirates do show up and no one believes him. But it's also the story that culminates in them getting their first ship, the Going Merry, which after completing Water 7 is sad to look back on. I probably should have said spoilers, but it's a given, I feel like. But then after Usopp, we go into Sanji's. Oh man, an arc I never would have guessed would have lasted as long as it did. Because like we just show up at this floating restaurant on the sea. Oh, we could use a cook, and then we meet Sanji, and then all of a sudden this just massive battle breaks out on the ship against Don Krieg. But it also does set up the Hawkeye-Zoro rivalry in a way, or at least Zoro. It gives him something he can aspire to be as strong or stronger than. Which is interesting because like Hawkeye, obviously I'm sure he's a character who will come back up eventually. I'm sure Zoro will fight him again. As of right now, I should probably say where I'm at, because even though I'm only going to cover 200 episodes, I finished Water 7 and I'm at Thriller Bark. That's where I'm at. So I'm like 330 episodes into One Piece. So it's interesting kind of going back and looking at these arcs now, because I mean for me it's been kind of close to a month since I last watched these. But the Luffy versus Don Krieg fight, I think the first kind of instance that, well, I mean there was also the Kuro fight, but his fight against Don Krieg really showed him just that Luffy, he's gonna grow way farther than what you can expect. I mean, granted, of course, I'm going into this show knowing stuff such as, you know, he will eventually get to like Gear 5. So like I'm aware of like the gear transformations and all that. It was fun watching these first like 200 episodes with him not having those transformations yet. But then obviously Sanji comes into the story, and Sanji's just such a character. If for nothing else, the characters of One Piece are so good. By this point in my anime journey, like a lot of them are characters that they're not exactly new types of characters to me. At the same time, they're refreshing to experience. That's one thing with this story that's been so long and is still so long. If the characters don't work or they aren't entertaining to watch, then this series wouldn't work. I'll never get tired of hearing Luffy say Gamu Gamu no! And of course Zoro going Onigiri! And that's also down to the voice acting as well. So good. If you landed a lead role in One Piece back in the day, you pretty much were set for life, because again, this show is still going. And just like the interactions and dynamics between the characters, and how like even going forward like hundreds of episodes later, they're still developing, which I think is fascinating and I think really speaks to the writing of One Piece. You could boil One Piece down to sort of just a shonen battle fest, but it is way deeper than that, just because it balances the action with character dynamics in ways that you wouldn't expect. I'm over 300 episodes deep and I still feel like I'm finding out stuff and seeing these characters grow in ways, and I can still see that they are going to continue to grow in new ways. Luffy's experience as a leader and a captain, Zoro grappling with that he's not the strongest, or he's not as strong as he thinks he is, Nami realizing the fact that she's stronger than she realizes she is. She has more than just her womanly charm and her lust for money. Sanji realizing that he doesn't have to be stuck in one place his whole life. He can go out there, he can make his own name. Usopp overcoming his fear of conflict and pain and becoming like a true fighter and a warrior. Chopper overcoming the fact that he won't be able to bring his mentor back, and that it's okay for him to want his own thing. Speaking of Chopper, this will be just a quick thing, but a funny analogy I once heard for Drum Island. The whole plot of Drum Island is just paywalling healthcare. This one guy is like, I will arrest every doctor, and now I control the entire healthcare. Funny stuff. But going into the next, up to this point, up to like episode 100 is like the biggest arc, the longest one, Alabasta. I guess overall, for these first 200 episodes at least, if I had to pick a favorite, I would say it's Alabasta. It's an interesting shift from the story we're used to at this point, just because we were so used to the open ocean and now we're in a desert. Why I like this arc so much is honestly because of the character of Vivi. I mean, it's one of those ones where it's like she was taken from her royal family and because of Crocodile, and it's the arc that introduced so many different, it's an arc that definitely powered up everybody. You know, Nami got like her staff thing that has her control weather and thunder, Zoro being able to cut steel. Overall, I still feel like that's easily like one of my top 3 of episodes so far is episode 119, where it's just an episode where Zoro fights the guy who can make blades with his body. And Alabasta, like, it was a fun yet heartbreaking tale of just Vivi trying trying to reunite her homeland from just this war. And it just goes to show how influential Luffy is and how awesome he is. Like, no matter what, we'll help you. And how it ends just with all of them holding up their arms with the X on their hand. I really hope Vivi comes back in some point, but with how far our crew's currently going, I doubt we're going to be going back to Alabasta anytime soon. And now I'm going to talk about some negatives. I know, really? What? How could there possibly be negatives? Though there is a lot of filler in One Piece, and again, you can find guides, you can skip it. There's still arcs that I don't like. I'm gonna be completely open and honest. Sky Island, I thought it was boring. I don't know if that's a controversial take. It didn't hit for me. I found myself skimming through most of it. I liked the ending though, once it finally got to when God showed up and Luffy fought him, when he fought Ineru. It's just mainly because I think like the other characters aside from our main crew, I just didn't really connect with them at all. It got to the point where it's like, I get the gist. So I sort of just like skim watched the remainder of the arc. There's this island, there's this whole prophecy or whatever, and then these different sides of it that are fighting each other, and then our crew is in the midst of it all. Oh yeah, I kind of skimmed over it by accident, but Robin. I mean, I'll have more to talk about with Robin when we do the next video where I talk about Water 7 and all that. I mean, with Robin in Sky Island, her role in the Sky Island arc was just mainly her showing her place in the crew, and then setting up obviously stuff that is to come in Water 7 with the whole polyglyphs and the hieroglyphics that were on that wall. I don't want to talk too much about Sky Island because I'm sure stuff I will say I'll get wrong because I'm remembering it wrong, and it's also been a while. For it being the last arc before we switched into like the new animation art style, Sky Island was the weakest for me. There were still parts of it I did enjoy. I mean, granted, there was parts of every arc at one point where I was just like, are we sure this isn't filler? That's just sort of my ADD brain. Ultimately though I get the structure of how these arcs are gonna work, you know, it still surprises me sometimes. I'll still feel it every time Luffy is fighting for his friends, you know, screaming to them just like, you're a part of this crew. And though overall there's two big goals in this show, and that is find the One Piece and for Luffy to become the king of pirates. For a show being as long as this, you know, it's hard to envision that. At the same time, it's not, just because obviously we're watching the entire story of how Luffy gets to that point. It's just crazy how a show like this exists. I don't care what anyone says. I refuse to believe that Oda ever intended for this story to be this long. Sure, maybe he had counted for maybe a couple hundred chapters, but I'm sure there's some story maybe where it's just like, you know what, fuck it, let's just see how long we can go. Granted, obviously One Piece does tremendously well. It's one of the best selling manga of all time, and obviously one of the best performing shows of all time. But wasn't there a thing that came out a while ago where he's just like, oh yeah, One Piece, it's about 75% done after like chapter 1100. God, it's gonna be so fascinating when I do catch up to this show. It's like, yeah, I'll be there with everybody watching these episodes week to week. Well, that's gonna be a bizarre thing. Overall, so far, it's fun to revisit these episodes. Again, it's why I'm doing these like benchmark episodes every 200 episodes or so, just to give me a chance to look back and talk about these arcs that have gone on. And though next time I technically will only have 2 arcs to talk about, Water 7 and Thriller Bark, I may increase it. I mean, granted, I feel like that's going to be a thing going forward anyways, that these arcs get longer and longer. Obviously, early on, we had a lot of smaller arcs, as you know, we're getting introduced to characters, but all that to say is I have really been enjoying watching One Piece. It is such a good show. This was a long time coming for me. I wish I had started when I actually started back on April Fool's Day, but at the same time I didn't, because while I'm enjoying it, I am sacrificing watching literally anything else in my spare time. But at the same time, it's sort of kind of been a background show for me as well, either like listening to music or like I'm reading a different manga. It's a show that doesn't need my 100% attention the whole time. I obviously lock in when like the action or stuff is happening or is important story, but it is just nothing short of a fun show, and I can't wait to check in again to talk about it again. But either way, this was my review of the first 200 episodes, give or take, of One Piece. Join me in the future when we check in again after I complete Thriller Bark and talk about episodes 200 to 400, or maybe 500, I don't know, depends, as well as everything else that'll be coming out soon. So until next time, I'm Lancer, thanks for watching.